AITA for keeping the cruise after my wife said her daughter wants her bio dad there. By noon, I had canceled the payments, sold the house, and left town. When they returned at 6:42 in the evening, my cell phone vibrated on the kitchen table. The message from Sarah said, "Plans changed. You are not coming on the cruise. Maya wants her real dad." By noon, my marriage was effectively over. I stood there staring at the screen as if it could blink and offer an apology. The coffee maker hissed and crackled behind me, burning the last of the brew I had not poured yet. The radio murmured a market report from Des Moines. Outside, the maple tree near the detached garage swayed in the morning wind, leaves skittering across the concrete driveway like they were in a hurry to escape. I read the text over and over. The same words, the same punctuation, the same casual cruelty. Sarah had sent it as if she were canceling a dental cleaning. I did not reply. I put the phone screen down on the pine table and watched it vibrate again. Another message trying to scratch through the wood to get to me. I did not pick it up. Instead, I sat in the chair at the head of the table. The chair I always occupied without thinking, the one facing the double-hung window, the one Sarah used to call my spot. The coffee went cold. I did not notice. 14 years earlier, I had moved into that bungalow on East Locust Street in Davenport with a sofa, a Craftsman toolbox, and a promise I intended to keep. Maya was 12 back then, a scrawny kid with braces on her teeth and eyes that were always observing. Her biological father, Gavin Price, had been more absent than present. Sarah told me that on the first night we sat on the back porch with sweating bottles of domestic beer in our hands. "It is just us," she had said. "Now we are a family. We are a family." She repeated it many times over the years. Whenever finances came into question, especially when I covered the copays for Maya's braces, Sarah would squeeze my arm and say, "Your money is our money." When I used part of my 401k withdrawals to buy Maya a used Toyota after she got accepted into Iowa State University, Sarah said, "That is what dads do." When I set up the automatic withdrawal for the cruise, the anniversary trip down the Mississippi River she had been hinting at for months, Sarah kissed my cheek and said, "We deserve this." But the message did not say us. It said my daughter and her real dad. The phone vibrated again. Finally, I got up and walked to the stainless steel sink. I poured the coffee down the drain without tasting it. The mug hit hard against the basin, as if it were angry at me for wasting the brew. I rinsed it anyway, slowly, watching the steam curl and vanish. When I picked up the phone, this time it was not another text, it was a voicemail notification. I recognized Sarah's voice before pressing play. Tense, fast, already irritated. "Marcus, do not turn this into a situation," she said. "It is just that Maya asked for it. You understand, right? Call me when you calm down." Calm down. I leaned my hip against the granite counter and closed my eyes. I saw a 12-year-old Maya sitting at that same table with Common Core math homework spread out, crying because Gavin had flaked on visitation again. I remembered how I pulled the chair next to her, not the head of the table, and said, "It is okay, kiddo. We will figure it out together." I remembered the way she smiled, crooked and relieved, as if she had been holding her breath. I listened to the voicemail again. Sarah's voice sounded rehearsed the second time, as if she had practiced it in her head before dialing. I did not call back. At 9:30, I should have been on my way to Dubuque to visit a supplier. I put on my Carhartt jacket, grabbed my truck keys, and stopped in the hallway where the framed gallery wall hung. There was one photo from the year we refinanced the mortgage, Sarah and Maya on the sectional sofa. Me standing slightly to the side, with my hand on the backrest, as if I was not sure I belonged in that frame. I had never noticed it before. At the supplier's office, I greeted people, talked inventory numbers, and nodded at the right moments. I missed a question and had to ask for it to be repeated. My phone vibrated in my jeans pocket. I ignored it. It vibrated again and again. On the drive back, I stopped at a gas station and sat in the truck with the engine idling. I listened to the phone ring until it stopped. The silence that followed seemed heavy, like a garage door closing somewhere I could not reach. I thought about calling my buddy Tom from the VFW post. I thought about calling my sister, Clara. I thought about calling Gavin Price and asking him what on earth he thought he was doing, returning to my life like a customer who had finally seen the bill. Instead, I drove home. The house was too quiet. Sarah had left early for the airport, so the master bed was made, stretched tight and smooth like a hotel room. I sat at the table again in that head chair and looked at the empty placemats. I imagined Sarah and Maya on the deck of the riverboat with the wind in their hair and Gavin leaning on the railing as if he owned the view. My phone vibrated one more time. This time it was a text from Maya. Please respect our space. I stared at it until the pixels blurred. I put the phone back on the table. I did not throw it. I did not curse. At noon, I canceled the cruise booking, the financing on Maya's car, and the joint checking accounts that were primarily funded by my direct deposit. I called a real estate broker I knew from breakfast at the Rotary Club. Sell the house, I told him. Full price, cash offer preferred. I will be out of town tomorrow. He asked some questions regarding disclosures. I answered with figures, hung up the phone, and for the first time that day, that silence did not seem so heavy. It just seemed quiet. It seemed mine. I flipped the phone screen down and pushed it a few inches away, like you do with a hot pan you do not want to touch anymore. The radio switched to the hourly news, a report on river levels, on logistics, on departures and returns. I sat there longer than I intended, listening, breathing, letting the pain settle into something heavier and more stable, something that did not scream. It was in that moment that it stopped being about the cruise. It was in that moment I understood that this was not a miscommunication or a rough morning. It was a boundary being drawn, a line they had been crawling toward for years while I paid the property taxes and smiled for holiday cards. I got up, took the head chair, and pushed it under the table as if I were clearing a workspace. Then I took my phone and turned off notifications. I did not sleep much that night. Not in that agitated way, but in that way where your eyes are closed, but your brain will not stop spinning in circles. Every time I started to drift off, that line came back. My daughter, real dad. It stayed there like a speck of dust under a contact lens, small but impossible to ignore. At 5:30 in the morning, I gave up, shaved, got dressed, and brewed coffee again. This time I drank it standing up. The house looked different in the dawn light, as if it were waiting for instructions. I checked my phone out of habit. 3 missed calls from Sarah, 2 voicemails. I did not listen to them. On the commute to work, the radio drifted between stations. An agricultural report, then a discussion on federal interest rates. I thought about the word rates, the way a man thinks about a thunderstorm, something you cannot argue with, only prepare for. In the office, I lasted until 10 o'clock before my hands started to tremor. I told my administrative assistant I needed to leave for a personal emergency and drove straight to the Scott County Credit Union. I had been a member there since before Sarah, before Maya, before all this. The same asphalt lot, the same heavy glass door. The teller, Susan according to her name tag, smiled as always. Good morning, Marcus. How can I help you today? I need to review my accounts, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She brought everything up on the monitor without a fuss. Checking, savings, automatic bill pays. I watched the screen scroll. Mortgage, utilities, home insurance. And there was the cruise payment, scheduled with precision, all drawn from my funds. Susan looked at me. Is everything all right? I nodded. Just auditing. I went back to my truck and sat there with the printed statements in my lap. The paper smelled faintly of toner and office air. I looked at the numbers until they started to look less like an accusation and more like cold, useful data. That night, instead of going straight home, I went to the VFW post on West Ferry Street. The lot was half full. Inside, the lights were low and the air smelled of fried onion rings and old stories. I ordered a domestic draft and sat at the end of the bar. Old Mr. Henderson slid onto the stool next to me without asking permission. 80 years old if he was a day. Navy cap soft as felt. He looked at me sideways. You look like you are finished, he said. I feel worse, I replied. I did not tell him everything. Just the broad strokes. The text message, the cruise, the way it landed. The old veteran took a sip and shook his head once. People do not change, he said. They just get more honest when they think they have the upper hand. I looked at my beer. I do not want to blow everything up. He put the glass on the coaster. Then do not build anything new. Build somewhere they do not have the key. That stayed with me. At home, I opened the filing cabinet in the guest room. It was one of those beige metal ones that squeak when you pull the drawer too fast. Inside were years of receipts and tax returns I kept, because my father taught me to. I found the paperwork for the orthodontist first. Maya's name, my signature as guarantor. I found the mechanic's invoice when her Toyota needed a new transmission. The carbon copies of checks for the 529 college fund, small amounts, regular, over years. I remembered skipping lunches to make those deposits. Sarah always said it was kind, necessary. We are a family. Then I found something more recent. Bank transfers I did not recognize immediately. Small amounts, recurring. Sarah transferring money to an account solely in Maya's name. Nothing illegal, nothing massive, but hidden, silent. I leaned back in the office chair and laughed once, short and surprised. It was not anger yet. It was clarity. My phone vibrated on the desk. I ignored it. It vibrated again. I flipped it over and watched the screen light up and then go dark. The next morning I called the cruise line. The representative on the phone was polite and indifferent. Reason for cancellation? She asked. I am no longer a passenger, I said. She processed the refund request without comment. That afternoon, I called an attorney recommended by the credit union manager. We met the next day. He was younger than I expected, wearing a loose tie and sitting at a desk cluttered with manila folders. The deed is recorded only in your name, he said after a quick review of the county records. You purchased it prior to the marriage? Yes. And kept finances largely separate? Yes. You can sell it, he said. And my wife? I asked. She resides there, he replied. That is not the same thing as owning it. I drove home slowly. I sat at the table again in that head chair and spread out the documents. The phone lay beside them, silent now. I was not angry, not yet. I was tired, and for the first time sure that what I had been calling patience was actually permission. I gathered the folders, stacked them carefully, and pushed the chair back under the table. Tomorrow I would make a call. I waited a full 24 hours before making the call. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts without Sarah's voice overlapping. Silence does that. It gives space to see what you have been avoiding. The realtor answered on the second ring. Her name was Diane Whitfield from the Bettendorf agency. I had met her years ago at a neighborhood block party. I am thinking of listing, I said. She did not ask why, just asked for the address. We walked through the house 2 days later. I kept my hands in my pockets while she took notes, knocking on drywall, checking window seals. The place seemed smaller than I remembered, as if it had already started letting me go. Does your wife know? She asked carefully. Is she traveling? I replied. I will handle the disclosure. Diane nodded. We can move fast if you want, but to be clear, if she contests the sale during closing, things can get litigious. I am used to ugly, I said. I am tired of the noise. That night my phone rang while I was organizing a donation box of old work shirts. Sarah's name lit up the screen. I did not answer. It rang again, and again. The vibration made the phone walk across the dresser as if trying to escape. A voicemail arrived. Then another. I listened to one. Her voice had changed from irritation to something sharper. Marcus, stop this. You are embarrassing me. Gavin is here. He thinks you are overreacting. Gavin. Of course he was. I deleted the message and powered down the phone. The offer came faster than I expected. A young couple, Dan and Elisa Morales, stationed at the Rock Island Arsenal. First baby on the way. VA financing pre-approved, and they were motivated to close immediately. Diane hesitated. They are asking for a seller concession on the closing costs. I thought about the dining table, the head chair, the way I always pushed it back when things got tense. Accept it, I said. The closing day was quiet. Just me, the title agent, and the hum of fluorescent lights at the title company. My hand shook once when signing the warranty deed. Afterward, it did not shake anymore. As I got up to leave, my phone came back to life. A text from Maya. Dad, Marcus, please do not do anything drastic. I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed back. I am doing what I should have done a long time ago. I packed the truck that night, only what mattered. I left the rest exactly where it was. When I pulled out of the garage before dawn, the house looked the same as always, solid, silent, already belonging to someone else. They were somewhere on the river making a toast. I was driving west on I-80, watching the sun come up, finally breathing again. They came back on a Tuesday. I know because Diane sent me a text at 3:18 in the afternoon with 3 words and no punctuation. They are here. I was sitting in a diner on the outskirts of Muscatine, a place with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like something that once thought about being a beverage. I did not reply immediately. I put the phone aside, laced my fingers together, and looked at the napkin dispenser as if it could explain something. Then I picked up the phone again and waited. Sarah was the first to call. I did not answer. 5 minutes later, Maya called. I did not answer either. Diane told me the rest later, piece by piece. Her voice calm, in that professional realtor way that seems to be describing storm damage instead of a life coming undone. Sarah had walked into the driveway laughing, her luggage still in the trunk. Maya was behind her with sunglasses, smartphone in hand. They both laughed at first. A vehicle they did not recognize in the driveway, the lawn mowed on a different diagonal, a new planter near the storm door. Then Sarah tried her key. Diane said she jiggled the handle hard, as if she thought the deadbolt would apologize and open out of shame. When the door did not give, Sarah stepped back and looked at the siding as if the house had personally betrayed her. She yelled my name. Then she started dialing. Inside, Ben Morales opened the door halfway, still with the security chain engaged. He was polite, even apologized. He said they had taken possession that very morning. He gave his name, asked if he could help. Sarah laughed, a short, sharp sound, and told him he was in her house. Ben asked what she meant. That was when Sarah started shouting. Elisa appeared behind him with a hand on her belly. Maya stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone no longer in her hand, face pale. Diane said it was the silence that struck her most. That half second where Maya looked around like someone waiting for an impact. The local police arrived. 2 officers, a sergeant who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. They asked for identification, checked the property records on their dispatch computer. The sergeant turned to Sarah and asked, "Ma'am, whose name is on the deed?" Diane told me Sarah did not answer immediately. That pause was when reality finally hit her. Sarah called me again. I answered on the 4th ring. "Marcus," she said breathlessly. "What did you do?" I leaned back in the booth and looked out at the gravel lot. A tractor-trailer rolled past on the highway. Somewhere a car alarm chirped and stopped. "I sold the house," I said. "You cannot do that," she snapped back. "It is our house." "It was my house," I replied. "You just lived in it." She started talking fast. Then came the threats, civil court. How dare I? How Gavin would never have done that. Gavin. Maya took the phone after that. She did not scream. That hurt almost more. "I did not think you would actually do it," she said. Her voice cracked on the word actually. Maya did not answer. The call ended. I finished my coffee. It tasted bitter now. That night I sat alone in the small apartment I had leased, a place near the riverfront. Nothing fancy. I unfolded the card Ben and Elisa had left in my mailbox. A thank you note, an ultrasound picture inside. I sat at the small dinette table and imagined the old dining room, the head chair, the place where I used to sit and try to hold everything together. For the first time, the chair was empty, and it did not feel like a loss. They filed the lawsuit a week later. It was not divorce, at least not yet. Sarah filed an injunction against the sale first, as if she could rewind time if she argued loud enough in the right venue. I was served with the subpoena at the apartment on a Friday afternoon. The paper was stiff and official, my name spelled correctly for the first time. The Scott County Courthouse smelled of old law books and industrial cleaner. The kind of place where voices drop without anyone asking. I wore the same blazer I used for funerals and Chamber of Commerce dinners. Nothing fancy, just clean. I carried a brown accordion folder under my arm, heavy with papers and memory. Sarah arrived 10 minutes late, heels clicking too loud on the terrazzo floor. Maya followed, eyes down, holding her purse like a shield. Gavin Price came behind them, hands in pockets, a smile too relaxed for a legal setting. The mediator, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses hanging from a chain, looked at the case file once. "Let us keep this efficient," she said. "We are here to discuss assets and property rights." Sarah jumped in before I sat down. "He abandoned us," she said, pointing at me like I was an indictment. "He sold our home behind our backs. My daughter was humiliated." The mediator raised a hand. "Mr. Holloway, you will have your turn." I waited. That was the hardest part, letting the words pile up without interrupting. Sarah talked about sacrifice, family, how I always promised to provide for them. Gavin nodded along, as if he had been present for all of that history. When the mediator finally turned to me, I stood up and put the folder on the table. It made a soft, solid thud when it landed. "I did not abandon anyone," I said. My voice surprised me. Calm, even. "I stopped paying for a life I did not have permission to be part of." I opened the folder and slid the documents forward. The original warranty deed, the mortgage payoff statements, the cruise receipts, the bank confirmations for the auto payments, dates circled in red ink. Sarah scoffed. Money is not everything. You said it was when it was mine, I replied. The mediator adjusted her glasses and read. She did not rush. That helped. She looked at Sarah. The property was titled solely in Mr. Holloway's name, purchased prior to the marriage. That is not fair, said Sarah. We were married. Yes, said the mediator. But marriage alone does not retroactively alter the title of premarital assets in this jurisdiction without a specific legal action. Gavin leaned forward. So, I am her dad, he said. Maya deserved that house. I looked at him for the first time since I entered. The same smile he had at the block party years ago when he borrowed cash and promised to pay it back. Seriously? I asked. Like the child support she deserved? The room went silent. Gavin's smile faltered. That is not. I have the court records for that too, I said, tapping the folder. Arrears, gaps in health insurance, missed monthly payments, emergency repairs you ignored. Maya finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but there was something else there too. Recognition. The mediator cleared her throat. This is not a therapy session, she said. Legally speaking, Mr. Holloway acted within his rights regarding the real estate. Sarah's face flushed red. So he just walks away scot-free? I looked her in the eyes. I did not walk away scot-free, I said. I paid for 14 years. No one applauded. No gavel banged. But something changed anyway. Sarah sank into her chair. Gavin pulled away from the table. Maya looked at her own hands. The mediator closed the file. There is no basis here to overturn the sale, she said. We are adjourned. Outside, the sun shone on the limestone steps of the courthouse. I stood there a moment, breathing air that felt earned. Maya came out last. She stopped a few feet away. I did not know all that, she said softly. I know, I replied. And I knew she did not, but knowing now matters. She shook her head once. She did not hug me, did not apologize. Not yet. I walked alone to my truck, the folder lighter than when I went in. The river was low that autumn, that kind of low where the sandbars show their backs and water slips around instead of over. I learned that sitting on the riverbank most mornings, with a thermos and a cheap folding camp chair, watching the Mississippi wake up the same way I did, slowly, honestly, without apologizing. The apartment was small, one bedroom, a table big enough for 2 people, though usually it was just me. The radio worked if you turned the dial to the exact frequency. I like that. Things that require a little patience usually tell the truth. Weeks passed without news from Sarah. When I got it, it was a short email about forwarding mail and a utility bill she thought I still owed. I forwarded it to my attorney and left it at that, no reply. No explanation. Silence had become a tool I knew how to use without hurting myself. Maya sent me a text in October, one line. Can we talk someday? I looked at it longer than I intended. I thought about the night she sat at the kitchen table with geometry homework spread out, the way she rested her head on my shoulder when the theorems did not make sense. We can talk, I replied, when you are ready to listen too. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our places. Neutral ground. She seemed older than I remembered, tired maybe, or just awake. I did not know about the money, she said after a while. About the bills you covered. Mom did not tell me. I was not keeping score, I said. I was keeping promises. She shook her head, eyes down. I should not have said what I said. I did not run to fix it. I did not take her hand or say everything was okay. I just let the words sit between us until they softened on their own. I am not asking to go back, she added. I just had not realized it cost you. That is the thing about costs, I said. You do not feel them if someone else is swiping the card. We finished our coffee. We hugged awkwardly and briefly, like people learning a new way to be in the same room. It was not a Disney ending. It was an honest ending. I could live with that. On Thursdays, I started stopping by the VFW post again. The old man was there almost every night, the same stool, the same domestic beer. One night, he looked at me and nodded toward the river outside. You look lighter, he said. I am, I replied. Turns out silence weighs less than pretending. He smiled at that, just a corner of his mouth. Winter came early to the Midwest. The river turned steel gray. I bought a heavy down parka and learned to cook for one person without burning everything. I slept better, not longer, just deeper. Some nights I thought about the house on East Locust Street, the dining table, the head chair, the way I used to push it back, always careful not to take up too much space. I do not do that anymore. What I learned, what took me 14 years and a silent text message to understand, is this: love without respect is just labor. Silence, when chosen, can be a form of strength. If you have ever been erased silently, if you have been told you belonged up until the moment you did not, I hope this story reminds you that dignity is not loud and justice does not always scream. Sometimes it just signs the papers, loads the truck, and moves on. Comment: we often think that fighting back requires noise and shouting, but true strength is usually quiet. Real dignity comes from knowing your worth, even when others fail to see it. When you're treated with indifference, you don't need to explain yourself or beg for a seat at the table. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to pack your bags and leave with grace. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's a necessary act of survival. You have the right to rebuild your life on your own terms without carrying the weight of people who don't value you. You can stand firm in your decisions while staying calm and respectful. Healing begins the moment you decide your self-respect matters more than their approval. I hope you find the courage to choose your well-being today. Thank you for being here and sharing this space with me. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.